Okay, shall we begin?
We shall, sir. Let me give you the highlight. Boom. And
So
I'm gonna mute
first,
the
I want
music.
to thank you all for allowing me to stand in for Mr. Majors today. I understand the enormity of the shoes that I stand in, and I acknowledge the huge compliment you do me by asking me to stand in today. And the fact that he's here makes it all the more special. So as ever, let's start with a text. The wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh and whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. John 3:8, and I've used the King James Version, which might be my first language. So good morning, good afternoon to you all. I spent a good bit of time this week helping some young men contemplate the period of African American history between about 1906 and 1911. One of the key things that was happening in African American life and thought at the time was the beginnings of the great debate between Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. Turns out that because of the way that human brains work, these either or, A versus B dichotomies are very useful, even when creating your own self-perceptions, Booker versus W.B., Malcolm versus Martin, etc. I am, for example, despite my Ivy League degree, a Booker T. Washington pragmatist at heart. Despite living in Harlem, I'm very much a Martin King institutionalist more often than I am a Malcolm X radical. Another of these created dichotomies that I have found useful in my own thinking is what I sometimes refer to as Sunday morning men versus Saturday night men. As I look out on this group of successful Black men, I see a room full of what I call Sunday morning men. Men who have accepted responsibility, played by the rules, and built stable, secure lives for yourselves and your families. Your hard work and wise choices have made you pillars of our community. Being a Sunday morning man doesn't necessarily mean that you spend your Sunday mornings in a church. It means more that you have decided to accept a level of responsibility for yourself and your family and your community, characterized by the kind of people who do show up at church on Sunday morning. I was raised very much to be a Sunday morning man, and I know several of you well enough to know to suspect strongly that you were too. The countervailing stereotype of a Saturday night man, on the other hand, is characterized by his lack of responsibility, his devil-may-care attitude, and his live-in-the-moment pursuit of personal pleasure. He is a libertine caricatured by the fact that his children are often not among those who know him best or see him most often. I had a professor at Harvard, Martin Kilson, who used to talk about these two kinds of men as tree shakers and jelly makers. Tree shakers are those who boldly challenge the status quo, agitate for change, and disrupt the existing order. Jelly makers, on the other hand, are those who work diligently to process the fruit of change, to preserve and institutionalize the gains, often begun by the shaking of the trees. The tree shakers wake us up from our complacency and push us out of our comfort zones. The jelly makers ensure that the fruit of our struggles are preserved and sustained for future generations. As Dr. Kilson used to remind me frequently, I am a jelly maker, trained to be a world-class jelly maker. But he also warned me never to forget that when the trees stop shaking, I will starve too. Jelly making is more lucrative. though sometimes less sexy and less emotionally fulfilling, it is no less important for that. But I, as a Sunday morning jelly maker, and you, wherever you fall within that dichotomy, are living through a time of immense change. Technological change in the form of AI that we talk about a lot, social changes that many of us couldn't have imagined as children, even spiritual changes in understanding differently how we process the divine. This kind of change seems to favor the archetype of the Saturday night man who laughs in the face of expectations and revels in risk-taking. How can we, as upholders of order, adapt to a world that suddenly requires more creativity and even more courage than it used to? The story of Nicodemus here offers us some guidance. Nicodemus was a jelly maker, make no mistake about that, a leader in the religious establishment. In the text today, he is having a secret encounter with Jesus. He took the risk of meeting him secretly to learn more. Like Nicodemus, we have accumulated wisdom and skills, but I, and maybe you, now need to dig even deeper for courage to open ourselves up to new ways of thinking and being. As Jesus says to Nicodemus, the wind blows wherever it pleases. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. As these winds of change are blowing in our lives, in our work lives, in our home lives, in our community lives, in the lives of our people, the Spirit might be calling us in unexpected directions. We must be open to that divine wind, even if that means stepping out of our comfort zones. A preacher I admire a lot, and I know that John does too, Howard Thurman, taught that our spirituality should be a creative encounter with life, not a retreat from it. Thurman challenged us to bring our whole selves, our minds, our hearts, our bodies, and all of our unique gifts to our faith and to our lives. So I'm asking today, what creative risk might God be calling you to take? How can I bring more of my authentic combination of Sunday morning and Saturday night to my endeavors? How can you? I know firsthand that it's not easy for established leaders to suddenly start shaking trees, but the future of our communities and our families, even our country, might depend on our ability to take more creative risks than we were trained to do. If we open ourselves to the Spirit's leading and trust in our deepest intuition, we will find a way forward. Gentlemen, as we conclude this time of reflection, I invite you to make a shared commitment with me before one another, before the universe, before God, before the Spirit. Let us pledge to be open to the leading of the Spirit, even when it takes us in dangerous directions. Let us promise to dig deep for the courage and creativity needed in these times of change. I invite you to stand as you can to affirm this intent with me. We, as Sunday morning men, as jelly makers and pillars of our community, commit ourselves to be open to the wind of the Spirit. Seek the courage to take creative risks, to affirm our authentic being, and to stand firm in our convictions. We will support and uplift one another as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of this challenging world. Together, we will work to build a future of justice, purpose, and thriving for ourselves and for everyone else. We will trust that as we step out in faith, the Spirit will guide us forward. If this is your intent, please say with me,
Amen.
Amen. And so it is.
Amen. So it is.
Ashe.
Hey, good job, brother. Good job. Excellent.
What's cracking, man? This brother sat down and put down a whole dissertation for us. See, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff had 2 days and said, "Hey, I got some." In fact, I called him and he said, "I actually have an hour and a half for you, but I'll bring it down to 7 minutes if you like." And that's cool.
I've
Excellent
been
job,
taught well
Brother
by
Deacon.
John's example.
Yeah, he crushed it, man. Thank you.
Thank you all.